Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the fourth event of the Public Occasion Agency. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I just want to say a few things about the Public Occasion Agency, of which tonight is the last event of this academic year. The Public Occasion Agency has been initiated by Scrap Marshall, sitting here at the front of the audience, and myself as an attempt to bring a kind of self-determining framework into the public program of the AA. Over the last 2 months, we staged a number of events which had a focus on the more kind of social way of looking at the city. The first event was with the British writer Ian Sinclair, after which we had an interactive sharing session with a number of South American practices, which was Work Your Talk. Yesterday we engaged in a conversation with Stefano Raboli at the ICA, and tonight we have Arie Versluis of Exactitudes, which is currently on display in the bar. A little word on Exactitudes. Exactitudes is Arie Versluis and Ellie Uitenbroek. Ellie unfortunately won't be here tonight. And they are a Rotterdam-based artist duo. Their work that Arie will be discussing tonight focuses on the idea of urban tribes and basically groups of specific dress codes within the city. It all started in the 90s when they documented the gabber scene in Rotterdam, and there the idea of archiving or indexing or whatever you might call it, Arie will be more precise, emerged, and they came with a format which is in front of you at the moment that investigates different social groups in the city. I won't say too much. The work is also on the display at the bar for the next 2 weeks. But please join me in welcoming Arie Versluis to the AA. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Jan, for the explanation. You did a lot, actually, because I'm a photographer and it's all about looking instead of mostly talking. But, of course, there's a lot to be said about this project I do already for 15 years. As Jan said, it all started up explaining a little bit. I do it chronologically.
Gabbers. Technomates in Italian candy-coloured shell suits. Bold, clean terror. Addicts to hardcore, 180 BPM in ecstasy.
Well, that says it all. It all started off with, in Rotterdam there was a massive gabber scene, and we were very interested in the fact we were always interested in fashion because we came from a fashion background. And suddenly we saw a lot of boys in the streets very imitating a British skinhead style, but then in a very candy-colored tracksuits. And that was at that time so big, there was no escape, and it was like for us very easy to get those people into the studio. We did a few portraits, and then of course we couldn't distinguish one another. Then we get more than 100 of the boys in, and they were actually all the same, they were all on ecstasy, and they all want to be like the same way in the picture. And from that moment on, we were thinking, let's continue and make something with this work. So this is a complete new website. I have to check a little bit how it works. Yeah, well, sometimes I do it because it explains quite well in English what some groups are, and probably it's even better than the way I can explain it. We went to, we have a studio in town. Next to it there's a gay bar, and this next new series was actually made in one night. We went there just to see whether the principle of the same dress code worked. And then, of course, we went back to the same bodies, and we came with the Gabber
3.
bitches.
Gabber bitches. Gabber following speed sluts. White trash, comfortable camping chic. Skip the top when it gets hot. Fly the Dutch flag with hair and shoe styling.
So we had that Gabber Bitches, which was the girlfriend of the Gabber boy. And actually from that moment on, we brought it to the Dutch media, doing those things on Gabber, and everybody was completely into it, because a lot of scenes are very difficult to describe. The actually thing you should do is actually show them how they are, and that's what we actually continue to do in 15 years. We went all around the world. I will give you some close-ups of some groups, just to give you an impression, and later on we go a little bit further. The whole thing is that we like to show the people the way we see them in the streets. So we go to clubs, we go to bars, we go to places where we think we can find people, and we ask them to come over in our studio the same way as we see them in the clubs. For instance, this is
4. Bimbos. Tasty sex icons go to buyabeachclub.com. Cocktails and dreams. Solarium bronzed artificial blondes, have more fun.
This was actually done really literally one night at the Bayer Beach Club in Rotterdam, which was a very tacky but very big club, and of course all the girls were artificial blondes. We just go over them, talk to them. We say we like to make a series about bimbos. Do you want to be in the picture? And then from the moment on they say, yeah, I'm a bimbo. Then you continue the story, and then you say, okay, so you want to be in a picture? Well, I have to ask my boyfriend, and well, that's the way it goes. But when they come into the studio, they have a certain days to think it over. So when they're actually there in the studio, they are fully aware of the fact that their picture is taken. That's what it's all about. This is their identity in a sense. And that's what they are proud of. This is what they want to be. And that is what we want to portray. Of course, we go for a similar posture, because it's a bit like a corps de ballet, to make it into one image, to make it more understandable for the viewer, and that's also a little bit of the artistic point behind it. Okay, going from that, you've got many groups we were thinking about, following them, going to all the places where we should go. Oh, this is a very interesting one. Check this one.
9. Young executives. Preppy dudes dress up once a month in daddy's clothes to debate, opinionate, and drink tea.
Jan, stand up. This is him. This is how it all started. There were the boys who were into this group. It was really funny that after all those years, there was still this sort of connection. This explains also a little bit of the difficult part, or also the extreme part of the project, because when you ask people who are not aware of the fact what they are or what to be in your project, you should be very sweet to them. So you follow them actually your whole life, because when there's an exhibition, and there are many exhibitions of the work nowadays in the world, you let them know where the exhibition is. You give them pictures, you give them, it's a family in that sense, which is quite a job actually to do, but a very important job to do. It are all people. Coming that, I will explain a little bit in a fast way why certain groups were made. For instance, like the skater scenes, it's 1997, all the brands were not, you couldn't buy them in Rotterdam. People flew to America to get the big brand names. A skater nowadays wouldn't be proud to be with Tommy Hilfiger that big on his thing. Cabo girls, Alas girls, which is an interesting thing nowadays, because we like to follow this group a lot. The supporters, the post-Gabber, which was happening. The Moroccans, which is quite a
14.
funny thing.
Moroccans. North African Chebs. with lots of nerve. Fake Carlo Colucci fantasy pullover cult sweaters, cheap Maroc leather and slick moustache. Really macho.
It's funny to see, you know, like that's how the trends went. You know, you had this massive gabber scene in the Netherlands, and then for instance, the place where we work from, Rotterdam, is quite an interesting place in the sense that the inhabitants of the city really change. You know, from the last years, it's more than 50% of the inhabitants are from different countries, and that, of course, is a clash in the city, especially in the youngster scenes. So when the Gabbers came up with an Italian brand, totally unknown to a bigger audience, the Moroccos came as well with an Italian brand called Carlo Colucci. Nobody knew about that brand, but every boy wanted to be in that kind of dress code at that time, saying this is our group against, you know, people within another group. We check a little bit further, explain them a little bit. Can you see? Yeah, you can see. The tattoo girls, you know, at time also evolving, we had to search a lot of girls asking, do you have a tattoo? And nowadays, you know, it's not that difficult anymore. You know, you just go to a club and you see whether a girl is heavily tattooed or not. But that a lot of things are evolving in a sense. Also, these manipulators, there are actually very young girls or boys who actually, you know, manipulate their bodies a lot. In 1797, we already discovered that, and we predicted already that fashion, of course, is a very interesting way of dealing with the world and expressing yourself. We see clothing as a language. But also your body is, of course, a lot of a language. You can do everything practically with it nowadays, and people will do that, and will do that even more. Well, punks never die. Of course, you've got Mohicans. We go a little bit further to some interesting ones to show, you know, how culture is
23.
Evolving.
Dreads. Androgynous Lonely Planet veggies. Dreadlock hairdo holiday, a social event. Infatuated by spiritual djembe, e-sounds, and sensimilia.
I never understood why white people want to have a black hairstyling, but they want it. Of course, it goes like this, you know. You don't see that much anymore. But it is interesting to see already, you know, how different cultures, you know, influence each other, and going more global with this project. You see that even more, that some trends, which are, for instance, in London very, let's say, 1999, are in Taiwan 20 years later in the same manner, and that's interesting to see. Oh. Yips. Said that, you know, the whole thing is about dress codes and how people want to distinguish themselves by dressing up and by really talking a language with your clothes. The way Ellie and me work is that we choose situations like a certain club or streets, or the last thing, for instance, we did in London was at Selfridges. Then we just sit at the entrances of Selfridges and we see people coming in, and then we have actually no clue where to start, but suddenly you see patterns in behavior, in the people, how people want to distinguish themselves. And actually that is the good thing about it, and also the good thing about it, I think about the project, also in combination with architecture, is that a lot of people actually have no clue how people really look. You know, when you really ask them to describe a certain social group or a certain fashion group, then it becomes very difficult to do so. So a lot of people, and actually I have to say a lot of architects, have quite old-fashioned images in their heads about certain groups. And to illustrate that in a sense, you know, you've got the
25
Dutch grannies.
Grannies. Calvinistic rinse and set binnies in stiff raincoats, anticipating all weathers. One hand on the pocket to protect the wallet.
You know, and people, when they think about a granny, they still think in those archetype, in this actually archetype. And we are now, you know, more than 10 years further, and probably, you know, that same granny is having a lot of outdoor clothing at the moment. She is much more sportive. She has a complete different view on life. And that makes the whole thing, the whole project so interesting for us, but also I think for all the people involved when they deal with people and when they plan for people. You know, this is also like, especially also sometimes with black people, you know.
30 Roffas, sparkling flavor girls, R&B, TLC, MTV, lounging in hot houses, timid inside, rough outside, come in groups, communicate in street language.
You know, sometimes we do this work, you know, not every time, because it's very intense to talk to the people in the streets, and you say, do you want to be in my project, and blah, blah. So we do commercial jobs in between. And of course, that has a lot to do with reality. Sometimes, you know, when you deal with the models you want to portray, the people you want to portray, then you have to come up with a good cultural mix. And then a lot of big companies said, but you already have, you need 10 people, and you have 2 dark people. Then they say, really literally say, you already have 2 Negroes. That's enough. And then you said, yeah, but the one is from Africa, and the other one is from Cabo Verde, or whatever. They don't see, they just look, you know. And that is so weird with this, and very learnful with this project, is that in the selection of the images, the girls are the best judges, you know. So we work with Polaroids. The Polaroids are always there when you work on a certain group. And then you ask a girl in the streets to come on into the situation, and then she said, she's completely fake. And then I said, oh, well, I think she's very good. And then she explains why she is a fake. And that's most of the times, you know, completely right. Then she is from a complete other background, from a complete other social group, or not the right fashion, not the right details. And I think it's so interesting to become more and more precise when working in a new exactitude. Let's see. We go a little bit quick. We went to China. Actually, we went all abroad in the same sense. I thought this was very interesting to see
34,
in Beijing.
Scream, punk rock rebel electronic surfers, low-budget gang in search of internet cafes, Marlboro cigarettes, and copies aping the West.
You know, we were the first time at that time in 1999 in Beijing, and then, you know, suddenly there was this huge punk explosion, and that was so amazing to see because they copied completely what I knew from the time the punk was really a thing, you know, like, and we were standing there and said, well, how on earth, you know, we are so much times further in history, and they do exactly the same. You know, they even copy the protest or whatever. It was amazing to see. And then when you talk with them, they had images in their heads, you know, which were completely from 2 decades before that. And that is so funny to experience. Also with this, you know, like we first have, for instance here, the Chinese official suit.
37, Chairman, the last survivors of the Cultural Revolution.
And then you have the new generation who actually is actually the same, but does it this way.
36, Mr. Wang, ordinary career-building office employees. Ready-to-wear CNA supersedes Mao's agricultural friendship suit.
Just really interesting to see that, you know, this suggests freedom, and China is free to dress the way they want now, but actually all the men are the same way as with the Mao suits. Again, quickly to Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro is a place where, of course, you don't need a lot of clothing because it's always warm, so the body becomes very important to express a certain identity. It was after like 4 months in Rio de Janeiro, we didn't find one girl with short hair.
40. Chickies. Karaoke teen girls, wiggling and giggling, mobile in the shoulder bag, dating after school for a short stop at the beach.
Very interesting to have, you know, that when you are in Rio de Janeiro, when you look at all the 14, 15-year-old girls, that you can't find any girl with short hair. All right. We go, it's an interesting one also to show.
46. Musulman. Wise men wrapped in hooded jalaba for the mosque. Pray 5 times a day. Ritual purification before each prayer. Wash head, hands and feet 3 times. Always start right. Islam Mathematica, Inshallah.
It's funny to see, you know, like this series we made in Casablanca, and this was the first series where we literally started to think to make executives about identities in different places all around the world. And we actually shot one guy in Rotterdam and placed him in this Casablanca series. And that completely worked, of course. So that makes our whole process of working very interesting nowadays. You know, like we can go to a few weeks to Paris and then go back to Rotterdam and then finish a series off in Manchester easily. You know, like, and this was not the case when we started the whole executives oeuvre, and we don't know really what to do with that. You know, maybe it proves that you should stop the series. We don't know. You know, like, first you had to travel all around the world to find certain styles and certain identities, and now you can find things everywhere, which makes it weird. Or maybe that is the new thing, that, for instance, eco-punks, there should be Rotterdam, London, Zurich, Milano, whatever, and there can be a person in every, from every different city into one series. Just to show
51.
You know, a little bit.
Sleeves. Reckless all-round borderline jackasses. Masters in leisure. Pain is pleasure.
You know, to see a little bit about the evolution, about, you know, the tattooing and whatever. This, we're making a series about girls nowadays. They're exactly the same, you know, like, this was, at the time that we made this one in Rotterdam, it was still very difficult, you know, to find the ones with the complete sleeves. Now when you go into any bar, you will find somebody who has a sleeve till here. So we have to continue the work and portray people with suits. You know, we have the total body tattooed, and we don't know where the end is in those things. You know, what to do with it is quite a weird thing, because there's a lot of evolution in the work and cross-cultural
55.
things.
Fly girls. Shopping girls. Flipping the script from ivory to ebony style. Flashy daughterhood of a multi-culti society.
A good example of what you see, that, you know, many groups influence each other. You know, those are the Wigger girls from Rotterdam. They want to be black. They have the street style, the street language. They do everything. to be that hip-hop R&B girl. And still, it is interesting to see and also talk to the girls who are completely not aware of the fact what they actually do. They just want to be like that. And I think that happens a lot nowadays, and it is, you know, they want to be friends, of course, with those boys. Okay, this is also the one, you know, like you can't find them anymore, especially not in the Netherlands, they're gone. This is a Cabo Verde one, is also very interesting in the sense that when you go, of course, to very remote places, you will find remote styles. But
61 black widows, poor working widows, surviving day to day, entirely dependent upon themselves.
They, some of the women still had the bones of the men around their neck, which was now forbidden in Cabo Verde. It's quite strange. Okay, we go to naturals.
63 naturals. Any model after the show look, finished off with stilettos. Simple, quick, and stylish.
You know,
skinny, fashion-conscious girls who love to underdress in designer jeans. Refined nonchalance becomes laid-back elegance.
it is, you know, like talking about social groups, you know, sometimes it is like you have to really show them what the group is. You know, like this really took like a weekend, a summer weekend in Rotterdam to find the girls in the streets, really look at everything, how worn out their shoes were, what kind of Helmut Lang jeans they were wearing that sort of non-makeup look, but with a lot of expensive skin products, you know. It is all so, you know, like detailed in a sense how a certain group is. You can actually go to their interiors and talk about it even further. There will be some projects of Muji, there will be this, you will be that. Probably it will be exactly the same. And sometimes it's shocking, sometimes it's fun to experience it. Interesting as well, you know, like
65 carry daddies. Mobility rules with convenient click-clack design. Proud papas spending Father's Day in the city, maxi-cozying, baby bjorning and bugabooing with their mini-me's. Togetherness.
Yes. But it's very interesting. A lot of architects ask about those. We work, you know, with KCAP. There's a big architecture thing in Rotterdam, and with Rem Koolhaas, is also in Rotterdam, of course. And they know to find us. They constantly ask for images. This is one of the images that is frequently asked. You know, an image about a father with a baby. You know, because they want to make a sort of presentation. And of course, architecture is also about the people who live in it, and not about Photoshop avatars. So they want to have some images about real people. And this is really, really weird that they come up always with the Carry Daddies. Can we send some Carry Daddy images? And of course, we do, because we think architecture is important. They never ask for those
66 babes. Exhibitionist, naughty next-door girls. Love to wear micro bikinis to show off their silicon gems. Birthday presents from their lovers.
You have a beach in Hoek van Holland near Rotterdam, and we go, Ellie and me go sit there with a beer, and then, you know, we try to see whether the breasts are fake or not, or they're filled with silicons or not. And of course, it's a difficult question to ask when you come up, and then you say, okay, are they for real or not? But then it is interesting that they have no shame in their game. When it's there, it's the same with the bimbo. Of course they're fake. You can see that. Okay, you want to be in the picture? Yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. Well, then you make a thing. And then, you know, they are so easy with that. You know, they really talk, you know, what's too much here should be put here, and something from here should go there, and when I have the money, I will do it. So that's the way to think about your body in that sense nowadays, and it's interesting. But never asked by architects, actually, those images, which is quite a question in a sense, because it's a big group. Let me see what's more interesting. It is also an interesting
68.
one.
Formers. International avant-garde individuals. Love to hold metaphorical monologues about art, architecture, music and literature, or anything else within their expertise.
That's really true. You know, they love Issey Miyake, because the pleats of Issey Miyake, you can put them, you know, in a small suitcase, and you can travel around the world and still look great and whatever. Those women, you know, that's why we call them the formers. They really truly believe in design. You know, the younger generations are, you know, completely cynical about design, because you can't get bothered anymore about it. You know, of course it's design, it's important, whatever, but there's a cynical feeling about it. Don't be cynical with those ladies. You know, for instance, he is head of Casa Mila, of Casa Armani, and you know, they truly believe in that fact. You know, this is Fondation Cartier. You know, these are those ladies, and never were married. They were always, you know, into the avant-garde of literature, arts, and design and architecture. You know, and that's the way they will end. And it is also quite lonely in a sense. I thought this was a very lonely series to make. Then we did a lot of, suddenly a whole thing about religion. We thought religion is hot. We went to make a big exhibition about Christianity in the Netherlands, and combined with dress codes. We went to
71.
Those parties.
Rally Rockers. Rebels for Christ. Satan sucks. On the safe side of metal and the extreme side of Christianity. Metal goes deep, and Jesus too. Together, they touch your heart.
You know, like, I never knew, when you go to a concert, and the concerts are enormous in the Netherlands, you know, there are big crowds, then you think, okay, this is just another hard rock thing, but they're completely into Christ, and this is, again, such a good thing to experience and to show how completely different the world out there is when you really focus on it. When you take your magnifying glass and really look at it carefully, you know, you will see complete different things. And for me, this whole religion series was quite a shock in a sense, because I didn't know that much about it. I didn't know much about
72 new singers. Antillean Christians in ecstasy from the spiritual power of the puppy esprit. From the morning coffee until the evening chicken, it's the family's Sunday social duty.
One of the big problems in the Netherlands are, of course, you know, like in every city, we did, for instance, are the suburbs. The suburbs of Amsterdam, and especially Amsterdam, they used to be a big problem, you know, the Bijlmer and whatever. Christianity helps them, in a sense. We were, like, so surprised when you go there, and when you visit Amsterdam, go check on a Sunday morning the Bijlmer churches. They are all in parking lots. There are more than 120 churches in Amsterdam, Bijlmer. And they go on the whole day. The people are completely in trance. It's a completely other way of dealing with Christianity. It was, for me, amazing to see, and also amazing to see how architecture planned, you know, to put cars in, were turned into churches. And of course Amsterdam doesn't know what to do with that, because you know this is not the way it should be. But oh fuck, sorry. Very, very interesting to see that that when you think about it, that you can plan everything, but people will find a new way to deal with it. And like those ladies as well, they all go to those
76.
churches.
Praise. God bless. Resurrection Power and Living Bread International Church. Here they save, heal, and free you from diseases and addiction. Now in Amsterdam Southeast. Hallelujah.
That's it. But it's cool. It's cool how people, you know, do something different than what was planned with it. We go a little bit faster because there are so many series. This was made for the New York
79.
Magazine.
Yupster Boys. iPod plugged T-shirt generation on wheels that won't grow up. Never shave.
It's a big phenomenon in New York, the Yupster thing. Actually, the whole of Manhattan is becoming Yupster. And it is all about, you know, not growing up. Your children they all have children. That's the whole thing about the Yupster thing. But they actually
80.
look the same.
Yupster
The
Girls.
Yupster girl.
Independent freelancers who don't want to be corner officed. Enforcing quality time to spend with their family. Parenthood is a promise, not a compromise.
And when you think about, you know, women like this, you know, they are really, you know, it's a different social group than 10 years ago, and people really don't underestimate in a sense sometimes how big it is, how they really go for that responsible lifestyle. It's interesting. I don't
82.
interesting in a sense
French
as well.
Touch. Clash of pseudo-rock, neo-punk trash heads who love guitar-shaped things.
Interesting to see always that cross-culture, that Paris wants to be London and London wants to be Paris. You know, like this looks more like the Clash in the punk days, and it are just young Parisian boys. And we made series here in London where, you know, the English boy wants to be very very French. That's always funny to see. Also good to see
84. Génie d'Enfer. Giggling shopping mall dollies. Sweets make me high.
You know, this is also like the group, they actually never eat with fork and knife. They always eat with their hands, which is quite a thing when you think about it. You know, like everything is done with their hands. They never sit down with a knife and a fork and whatever. Obedience when you go to the suburbs is extreme. This was all made in Bordeaux in France, just a plain shopping mall. And have you ever sit down a shopping mall for 4 weeks? It's quite interesting, I can say. Just sit down or take a chair and look of the people who go in and out. And those are the people where you design for, in a sense. But you never have a good look at them. Even for us, you know, they are sometimes so invisible, like those women.
85. Femme Actuelle. Housewives with a clean, crease-resistant spirit. Cozy cuddling at home as the world turns.
Because those are the people, you know, like where all these neighborhoods are with fancy architecture and things like that are made for. And to really meet the people and talk about their houses and what they do, why they go to that shopping mall every week, the same shopping mall. They never go anywhere else. It is a thing, I think, when you deal with urban planning and architecture, you should do. You know, those
86.
guys.
Invisible, middle-of-the-road family men, living a day-to-day working life, buying everything from socks to insurance at the self-serving supermarché.
When you ask them, you know, did you ever, when was the last time when you really bought some clothes in a clothes store, then they don't know, and we really ask them. They always buy the clothes at the supermarket. You know, when the wife is doing the groceries, and they take some t-shirts, some shorts, whatever, and when the winter comes there will be a jacket. So that is a big social group. And we don't know sometimes how to label them, so we call them the chef de conforme de moderne, because they have it all. They have the car, they have the house, they have the wife, they have the 2 kids, they have the big television set, they have the food, they have everything. They're sort of happy with life, also interesting. Also an interesting one.
88. Flower power. Flashy, self-made freedom guys who love taking risks. Networking with a personally organized, portable office in the palm of the hand is their lifestyle.
You know, those are the guys who used to roll up cigarettes when they were 20 years ago, and then suddenly, you know, they became, you know, important people. You know, they're all self-made men. They have a lot of money, and it is interesting, of course, to see that, of course, Paul Smith comes with a flower design, and it's you can do that, and of course it hangs out of your trousers because you get a little bit fat here, and you know, it is so they are not aware of the fact that they are conforming themselves to a certain group, in a sense. They just like it. It suits me, isn't it? And of course it suits them, but when you put them all together, you know, you have that group. And a lot of people, when they see the work, they are actually quite surprised that they are so similar to the other one. And that is always the confronting element when you portray people in a group like that. And that doesn't say that everybody can be boxed. You know, people are far too individual for that. 20% of the people can be put in an exactitude like that, because that is, you know, the groups where you can get some communication. But the rest, of course, has elements of those groups. Okay, let's show some London series. We escaped London with this work because London has always had that feeling that they invented street style. You know, that was always the thing. They're very arrogant. And I think that arrogance was right in the 80s, but not right anymore. The world gets very global, and London has lost at a lot of points his edge in that sense. But then you can say that, and I can proclaim that as a connoisseur, but then you have to also prove it sometimes. So that was cool about the London thing. And it did show that London still had a certain, has an edge. For instance, what was very interesting to see, the lesbian scene. Oh, here we go again. Okay, the lesbian scene was interesting because that's not that visible in other smaller countries, and of course London is such a big city. You can be anonymous if you want to, so you can go to places. There are clubs. There are
excited young lesbo rebels, comfortable in their
evenings
skins.
to do it.
Moustache,
To be
tattoo
lesbian.
finger placed under the nose, hails their sisters in the know.
Okay. We call them misshapes because that was actually a club name in London, and we quite like the name. They all have that pseudo-political scarf, which was, why on earth do you want to, why? What is the sign of that? Of course, when you think about it, about the Rio de Janeiro girls, the ones with no short haircuts, of course, when you go into this scene, they're all short haircuts. in that sense, it was interesting also to see such a young, vibrant, big group. I didn't expect that, and was funny and good to have them around in the studio.
90 geeks. Hopelessly dumb-looking brains if you don't understand the arty fashion language. But those geek chic guys are the creative pioneers of the future.
Interesting, of course, that a lot of people were fashionable geeks, but also a lot of not. This was a teacher we saw in a school. And so we asked the guy to come over, and then the other ones were at art schools. But it was that whole feeling about that the nerd is sexy, and that is suddenly a very global thing. Interesting also as, when you make that look, that dumb look, very artificial in a sense. A group shot here
91
just a few streets ago.
Bears. Are they really gay, these hetero real men lookalikes? Chubby and hairy, beer-drinking mates, farting while flirting in bear clubs, chasing bear cubs. Come to daddy.
Actually, when we worked at Selfridges, we went out here just off Oxford Street, and there was a bear bar, and all came from the same bear bar, actually. Again, so interesting and tribal to see, you know, what they really want, that it's a plus to be fat in that scene, like it's a plus to be that sort of dumb looking in the nerds. Interesting from the east end of London.
92 pin-ups. Betty Page 20-year-olds from Shoreditch Artland. A burlesque mix of 40s and 50s vintage movie star style with a hint of rockabilly.
I thought it was so good to meet those girls because they were so specific about what they wanted to wear, and they had a very refined feeling of color, which I really liked. You know, they want to have that specific green, which was really 30s, or that specific red, and they could really talk about those color tablets very well. And I think that it shows a lot of how difficult it is nowadays with all the big globalization stores like Zara and H&M and whatever, to distinguish yourself and to do it in different kind of way. And that this is why London is always very interesting for style, of course, is that the city has this heritage of people who try to do it different. And it is, of course, for the industry also very good to look at those girls, because, you know, when they all together go, for instance, for a matte lipstick, then the makeup brand has to find something, some answer to that wish of those girls. So they have to rethink all the things. No shiny lips anymore. We wanted matte, matte, matte. And of course, it's also interesting to see then that it goes so fast. You know, like when I check sites as sartorialists or whatever, I see the same girls. You know, they become icons overnight in a sense. And that also shows that the world wants things like this, but it's not much happening. This is that Bonker Boys group.
Bonker Boys. Romantic students with the look of a Nouvelle Vague existential sailor, happy with their economy of means and rugged, confused hair.
This is that show of that example of that you like to be French in a sense, has a French look, a Breton look, while you live in the East End. Asian shoppers.
94. Bu Ying. Asian fashionistas visiting Western shopping mecca. The mission is to get their hands on the only must-have designer it bag of this season. The Hermes Kelly, the Fendi Spy, the LV Speedy. They all make you greedy.
Also, in observing those girls at Selfridges, at the counters of Louis Vuitton and all the other big brands, you see similarities. And one of the similarities was always that they look at the bag and then they got their phones. And I never understood what they were doing. But then we started to ask the girls, what are you doing with your phones? And of course they were checking if they had enough money to actually buy the thing. So we look over shoulder with them, and it is, you know, strange when you come from Taiwan or Beijing, and a lot of girls from Shanghai, especially to London, to the shopping mecca, and you know, go home with a new it bag. That is, you know, and not go to the V&A or to an exhibition, but that's the only mission in life. It's quite a thing. We
95.
don't have that.
City Girls. From Citibank to Slug and Lettuce. From TaylorMade to TM Lewin. From Old Boys Network to Corporate Girls. The heel is the female tie.
Incredible group, because you know, I think they're very British, and it's very from the city and the Canary Wharf, of course, and you don't have anything which in Paris or in other places which resembles this group, because it is so unbelievably tight in his connotations. The way you dress your blouse, it shouldn't be too deep. You should show some cleavage, but not too much. The hair should be like this. The skirt length should be not exactly around the knee. The height of the heel should not be too high, but like this. The color of the panties is skin color or dark. It is incredible. The pearls are sort of, you know, like not too heavy. It was an amazing group to follow, and also a bit of a difficult group because we never show working clothes. We call that working clothes. You know, the clothes you go for to do your normal work, because they turn into a uniform. But then we liked to show this because it was such a London thing. And then also the London thing, you know, which is the difficulty with London, that on the one hand you have all this extreme individuality and people who do it very right, and on the other hand it's one Nero's, Starbucks, eat, pret-a-manger. It's so unbelievably over here. I think it's very shocking. You know, I come flying in from Rotterdam, and I talk with for a big thing for Lavazza we're working on now. So we're talking about Italy and Milan and whatever. And then you come flying into London, and as soon as you're in London, it's all about Starbucks, eat, pret-a-manger, whatever. And it's like, every time it hits me. You know, like, how on earth is that happening? And when you sit on the bus, you go from one to the other. And then also these girls, I didn't know the slag and lettuce. What is slag? Slug and lettuce. I didn't know that, you know. But when you sit down actually and see all the people, you know, having that same kind of food every day, it's, yeah, amazing. Probably very London in a sense. I don't know what you think about it, but I think London should do something with that. The Cassettes gang, we would like to finish it up.
Cassettes gang. Future primitive and cyber symbolism. Cartoon couture by cassette player designer Carrie Mundane. Inspired by the toxic colour of 80s acid house culture.
We wanted to show this because it's so cartoonesque, and it is probably the best answer to all the problems about individuality and and dealing with so much images and dealing with Starbucks that you have to take the piss out of it and probably and be non-creative in a sense only. I love this about this clothes, you know, like it's only mirroring, that's it, that's the only design thing you do. And probably the right answer. We go for a group we're making for Thalys. We work a lot in commissions doing this work because that really gives the money, and we don't want to go to governments for money to make this artwork. We like that it's in the world. So Thalys came up and the European Commission come up. What is, you know, everybody is talking about the European identity, but what is European identity? And I have no answer as well. The only thing we did, we sit at 3 stations, at Nice and at Gare du Nord in Paris and in Rotterdam. And we looked for 2 months at people. And we came up with those series. Of course, the International Backpacker, that was a thing. It is not that sleazy person anymore, but...
An easygoing, open-minded community of travellers. An alternative talisman, a sentimental piece of junk encountered on their journeys, guides and protects them from budget hostels to stay-okays.
That was an... excuse me, he is from France, you can see that. It's really true. Okay. Well, another gay thing, which not so. This was interesting.
99. Neighbours. The middle of the road, next door senior, growing vegetables and fixing odd jobs. He's your dependable handyman.
I would love to have a neighbor like that. You know, you can always call him when something is wrong. And this was actually made. There was an explosion at the station in Rotterdam. We didn't know what to do. We shot this series in probably 3 hours. They were all out there. And then we realized it is once a month, it's free traveling day for the grannies in the Netherlands. So they all come from the province to the town. And really, this is amazing to do and to see that, you know, they are really like this. You know, we don't ask them to, you know, to wear this, or it is what they have. They have it already for 5 years or for longer. It comes out in the summer because it's handy, and yeah. We were sitting as well at...
Cocktails and Dreams. Booty-shaking tropical Latinas at the Rotterdam Solero Carnival. There's no shame in their sexy game.
Well, the text says it all. You know, like, no shame in your sexy game. Just walk, color blocking. You know, that's a very thing from that mostly Antillian girls, the Dutch Antilles. It's about color blocking. It's about, you know, big shapes of color. And yeah, what's there to say? Oh, some of the groups are so
101.
nasty.
Dutch family. Local pragmatic tourists, armed with thermos and lunchbox for a cultural city trip. Take the train, rent a bike, and tour a museum with a single combination ticket. It all makes sense.
It all makes sense. That's very important. You know, like, don't do stupid things, you know, be practical, handy. It is a group of women which is so difficult to portray, you know, like, and also when you think about, you know, what do they want from life? What kind of houses do they have? What kind of political votes do they have? What do they wear? Where do they buy those jackets? They actually all get it from the internet, believe me. That is, of course, a thing all around the world. You know, like you can get your things on the net, you know, overnight. The hipster.
102. Hipsters. Funky, globalized, unisex stylers with an ironic attitude. Desensitized to information overload. It's a subculture to which nobody claims to be part of. Rock and rave, and let's crash the ugliest sweater party.
I think this is one of the things which is unbelievably global. And if, like you can't, you know, when you, it doesn't matter when you're in New York or Toronto or in Paris or in Italy or in the Netherlands or in somewhere here in London or whatever, youngsters, you know, would dress up a little bit like this and give that ironic touch to it, indeed, because they probably completely overloaded with images and information. But also to, I don't know, it shows something, you know, how difficult it is to be that individual in that globalized world. You know, you come up with a look with no glasses in your, with no glass in your glasses, for instance, and then suddenly you realize that 10,000 do that in Berlin, and 5,000 do that in Milano, and whatever, and that is. Maybe they don't think about it, you know, they just do it, which is also fine. But this is, for instance, a series, you know, we shot a few in Paris, we shot a few in Maastricht, we shot a few in Rotterdam, and it doesn't matter actually where you make the series, it's out there.
(103) Muslimas. I'm wearing the pants and I can speak for myself. I'm carefully balancing between fashion and faith.
This is, of course, a very interesting one, because as soon, again, you know, you're always very fresh when you land up in a new situation. You know, like when I come into London, the first thing I see in Stratford, waiting at the station, the enormous amount of veils. Is that called veils? And this is what you don't see in the Netherlands, you know, not that much and that completely veiled. This series is banned in France. You know, we couldn't produce, this was made for the European community, and they say, okay, we refuse this series. And then we got a big argument about this, because why it is that France doesn't want to promote the veil. And then suddenly you realize what an important sign, of course, it is to wear that veil, especially when you're 18, 17, 18 years old, growing up on a multicultural school, whatever, this is my identity, this is what I want to be. And then you come up into, you know, like you go to France and then you go to the same school and you are not allowed to do that. So this was quite an argument, and then we were asked to come to have a dinner at the French ambassador in the Netherlands to speak about this group. You know, like if we want to be that real artist and that we were very like this, we want to put this on a train, because it was meant to be on the train. And then we were advised not to do so. And then we thought, like, this is so weird, you know, like, it's only a piece of cotton, you know, and of course it has a sign. But what is wrong about those girls? Why can't there be? Why can't they have this identity? And then what you, of course, see on the multicultural scene is that a lot of girls who are not Muslim copy the style. You know, because it has such a rebellious element nowadays. It's a weird European discussion, and I think Europe should give a good answer on this. Especially France and Italy has to come up with a good answer, because you can't do that. Another one which I think is
104. Commandos. The army of kids, Rambinos, ready to take the streets in screaming camouflage. Children should be seen and not heard.
When you go to the big chains, the kid stores or whatever, you know, it's very normal to buy camouflage. And I think it's completely crazy to dress your children up in camouflage because it's still a sign of war. And but people completely don't understand the parents. They think it's nice to do so. Another series which of course is so dull
Flex
but so
managers.
international.
Interim project-based consultants with blue sky ideas. Out-of-the-box thinking for flexible solutions.
You know, like you have to do something with that ugly laptop bag. So this was again made in such a great tempo, like a fast tempo. It is probably 2 days, and yeah, what can you tell about them? You know, it's that international look. It doesn't matter whether you're in Brussels or in London or in Rotterdam. People have this. They have they don't wear the tie because that's too official. They have that ugly bag with for the laptop, and of course you have to find a solution for this because you have to carry your laptop. I know for sure. But it does result in this. What's to say about
106.
this also?
Stars. Jenny from the beach, celebrity look. Wear your designer sunglasses, even at night.
You know, this look, I don't know where it gets from. You know, it's that feeling that it should be sunny, always, everywhere, Californication, everywhere. You know, this is shot in Paris in April. It wasn't that warm. And, but, you know, it should be summer every time. You should, you have the right to sit outside. That is the feeling you get with those girls. And of course it's difficult, you know, what to say about it. Is this fashion? Is this a style? Is this identity? Is it really important to portray? We think it's important to do so because it also shows how easily it blends with all the different nationalities people have. They have that sort of same kind of post-hippie stardom look, and that's why people feel comfortable in that recognition, and that's why we think it's important to show. And of course, you know, like also such a thing
107.
like
Ghetto Fabs. It's about living above your means, showing off in rented cars, striking it platinum rich, whilst dining from foam cups and paper plates. The look du jour is always box fresh.
You know, people, you know, when you think about styles and the whatever, it is, of course, this hip-hop feeling is already so long out there. But it doesn't change. You know, it continues to be like this. And that is the weird part of it, because this was, you know, like shot 2008 in Paris, and then you see all the guys coming into the station, and you think, okay, shall we make this series or not? But then there are so many that you really have to make him. To just, you know, when you think about your oeuvre of the work you want to make, you must show again in 2008 that look is almost the same as 50 years ago. And that it will continue to be for probably another 10 years.
(108) Boubou. West African men in ethnic dress of tissu vax de luxe wandering the urban environment, whether Christian or Muslim. It's the feeling of spirituality in a 24/7 city.
Shows again the difficulties, you know, for me as a white person to look at a black culture. Especially when you do, for instance, this work in Paris, it will be different than in London. I used to live in Brixton for a few years, and I know that a black population over there. But then working in a Paris situation, Paris has so many colonies, had so many colonies in Africa, and all the people come from different parts of Africa. And you really take a few months to recognize that people are from Ghana, and that people are from Mali, and that people are from... And that makes looking and observing people a joy of life, because you really learn, you learn from it. You know, you learn from Paris by meeting those people, because suddenly you realize that this guy is from Mali, and the other one is from Ghana, and that one is from all the other African countries which are visible in Paris, that it is good to know that. And because when you design for those people, for instance, it is quite a difference when you come from Ghana or from Mali.
109. Les filles du 7e. Posh, privileged, and well protected, the daughters of Sarkozy are 15-year-old wannabe women with the style of a tabloid actress. Slim jeans and ballerines to match the blasé looks. I'm so not impressed.
See, when we were talking about the Yupster girls in New York, actually, you know, those are their mothers. They actually look the same. You know, when we did do some couple pictures, so the mother and the daughter, and they actually had the same clothes. You know, like, so there's hardly no distinction anymore to be a grown-up or to be a 15 or 14-year-old girls, because they're all this age. And as said in the soundtrack, you know, they are very blasé, and of course they're very rich, and they come from the most rich part of Paris. But what shall it do? What kind of life they will have when they will be 20 or 25, when you already have everything when you are 14? That's the question we ask.
110. Tectonique. Derivative subculture from Parisian suburbia, driven and bonded by break-dance-inspired clashes. Tacky, tectonic killer dances make their own movies with trademarked fly-flapping arms and shuffling feet. YouTube is the battleground. The family garage is the dance floor.
It's interesting as well to see, oh, here we go again, girl, that it was actually after all this thing, we're almost at a certain end of the series, that it was the only thing we could think about France and Paris at that time, which was really a thing from the suburbs of Paris, was the tectonic kind of thing, and with their own dances, their own language, their own kind of YouTube movies. That was quite good to see, and also good to see that when you go to the south of France, or the south of Paris, because it's very the south of Paris, that when you go to the tectonic clubs, they were like massive and enormous, uniform in style, but quite authentic to see. Which is nice to see that not everything is so globalized.
111. Gitane. Fierce bohemian actresses with a herd of poor children. They made begging a 9-to-5 job. Every Roma gang's matriarch has her own territory in public space.
I go to 2 other series I like to show, because
111. Gitane.
Because they explain a lot what's happening. It's a sapeur.
112. Sapeurs. Dandy-ass gentlemen and dedicated followers of La Sape. Société des ambianceurs et des personnes élégantes. These mostly Congolese poseurs from Brazzaville escape their daily routine by dressing and behaving chic. If you dress well, you forget your worries. Sapologie equals sartorial escapism.
It is the thing in Chateau Rouge, in Paris, and also in all the other suburbs of Paris, is that suddenly there is this massive scene of sapeurs, and they want to be elegant, they want to be rich looking, they want to be dandy-esque, they walk with walking sticks, they treat you very well in the streets. It is like almost a counter thing to all the aggressiveness and all the ugliness that's going on. And check out on the internet, go for the Sapeur, have a look at the great movies they make about style and how they behave and talk to each other. It's very beautiful to see, and it also expresses a lot about what is happening, of course, a lot in culture, that you know, what was high up in culture and supposed to be for the rich only, that is dropping down so fast, you know, like every people can behave like very rich and take over that behavior and expressions and lifestyle. It's good to see. What's we have to finish, because maybe you have some questions. Want to explain more about that dropping down of the lifestyle, the shot in a club in Belgium, you know, those boys, they want to come to the club with a limousine. Of course they have no money. Okay, we can go on. Oh no, no, let's finish with this ones, the last ones. Yummy Mummies, which of course is so big, especially also in London. We try to do that in London, but so we went to Notting Hill with to find the woman, but they were so busy all the time. So we actually made a series in Rotterdam where the women were not that pressed, but were actually the same. And I think it's a very good series to end up the thing, the Yummy Mummies, because that is such a target group that shows how quick things are and how quick things go and evolve. A new social group. Yeah.
Thank you, Ari.
Yep.
Thank you. Ari, thank you for this room. Very refreshing way to navigate the city.
Well, I had a difficulty with the language because I was trying to talk Italian this morning, and then suddenly English. But then the soundtrack makes it right, probably. Yeah.
Soundtrack was good. Are there questions from the audience?
Thank you for the lecture.
Thank you.
When I listen to the website descriptions and yourself, I'm worried that you blur the distinction between groups of appearance and groups of people. I think it's easy to find businessmen who look alike, but some may be good people and some may be criminals. And then, how can we describe their personality with the same posed narration, as if we knew?
I didn't get the last sentence.
How can we describe them? Because you do use words like dumb, ugly, or stupid, or you do refer to their personality in their description.
Yeah.
But these are judgments based on appearance.
That's true. That's you're absolutely right. And of course, I am a person who makes it. So of course, you make some judgmental things, or you give judgmental vision on it. But then when it's out there in the public, where it's all about, and in the book and in the on the website, and we never judge in a sense. But on the other hand, I think there should also be a little bit of humor involved, because of course it is you can go very deep in it and pseudo scientific, which is for us totally not the case, because we are artists and we are just observers, and of course you will get a lot of knowledge from it, but we will never really speak it out very loud. Of course now in a situation like this, it's you can be more judgmental, but the good thing is we're making a new book, and the book will be far more about people from different fields who will write about the oeuvre, because that is where, after 15 years, people have a lot of questions. And the good thing is that everybody looks at the work from a different perspective. A sociological person will have a complete other view on this. A fashion person has a complete other view on this. People from architectural from the architectural world will look at groups differently. So there is no real thing in it. It only is that the people are real, and that we didn't change them in a sense. Of course, we make it artificial in the way they pose, of course. But they are what they are. And after 50 years, we never had one person complaining about the fact that they were portrayed in a certain group. And that proves to us that we were right about it. Right in the sense that the people who were portrayed in a group like the Yummy Mummy really felt like the Yummy Mummies. Yeah.
More questions?
Yeah, I just agree with the previous speaker. I think it's quite pejorative the way you've presented that, and I think that's a distraction. I think what will be much more interesting actually is just to show the images and then reflect on what that means for branding and identity and tribe, really, because you're talking about tribes. And so my question to you is, what does it mean? Why do we need to identify with a tribe, and why do we need that identity?
Why you need identity, that's the biggest question of our time, I think, because having an identity is not that easy anymore. It is not that comes from your upbringing or from your destination. It's something that you have complete control in. And that is the most difficult part, you know, like we are now in a time that we have complete freedom to make our own us. And what you see is actually that people resemble each other more and more. And that's quite a contradiction in a sense. So I do think that that you should be very active in forming that identity, and that identities come and group identities come very quickly nowadays. You know, like they are interesting, and they are so much more interesting sometimes when than you think. For instance, the last month we were working in Paris, and then we were constantly working in the banlieue. And then, for instance, as soon as you got over the périphérique, then it was, for instance, very difficult to find a good glass of wine. Well, that is something, you know, which built, in a sense, an identity, because I can't go to a nice local cafe and have a glass of beer or a glass of wine and meet some people. No, that should be done in a different way. So you go to shopping malls, or you go to cinemas, or you have to create new places to find people. And that shows for me that those people also have a different identity. An identity which is not that it's not that easy, that's not the word, but it's when you when you look at it, you see how different it sometimes is than you think. Can you follow that?
I suppose, I'm not quite sure I got the answer to the question. What I think is that brand and identity is, you know, we use designer logos and labels to kind of enforce an identity, and we have an identity, and that's such an obsession today. And I just wonder why that is. Why do we need that? Why do we need to form individual groups and belong to that group? And why is that important?
Whoa, that's a big question. Not everybody does it. Of course, that is also the good point. The good part of artists is that they show an extreme world. Of course, that's what I said. You know, 80% cannot be put in an executive series because they are bits of everything, and probably that is far more the thing. But you have to make choices every day about what you eat, what you wear, what kind of transport you use, which site you visit. It's every day. It is choosing, and that the choice, the many choices you make during a day, are actually they build up an identity in a sense. So you can't escape. You have to make decisions every day. And of course, it's for instance, when you look at eating patterns of people, that explains always a lot about what kind of groups people are, or how they, you know, how they give you an idea to look at them. For instance, for me, it is really not shocking, but amazing that a lot of people I portray never eat with fork and knife. I never think about that, but only the last years, while dealing with more projects we do in the suburbs, that when you go to dinner with friends, because you meet people, and they say, well, shall we have a bite? Yeah, do we eat with hands or with cutlery? And then, never thought about it. Well, probably with our hands then. But that is already a choice. What do you think? But I don't think we are that obsessed with it. Because I think a lot of people are quite ignorant to all the small details in which people express themselves. You know, styling is essential details. That's what the fashion industry says. But it's also true in what you are. When you go for, when you meet somebody the first time, probably you screen that person. You look at all kinds of different small things which will reveal a person. And that is, and I think the bigger an urban situation gets, the more important it is. I think it's, for instance, I feel it more in New York than I feel it in Rotterdam. There are people, they have no clue for you, but so they check you. And I do it the same way. You know, I look at color of the teeth, for instance, or the healthiness of their skin, or all those signs which explains a person or a group where the person is from.
One more question from the back.
In a sense, what you're doing here as well is you're trapping people in that particular identity they've chosen on that day at that moment. We inhabit lots of different identities. We can be very playful with it. Yep. So I just wanted to make that point. And also, I suppose it's, you know, sort of a truism that this is a particular moment in the West, or was a particular moment. We're on the cusp of who knows what sorts of changes. But when people have choices, there are lots of places people don't have those choices.
No, they don't have a choice, but they can be in the same manner playful with with the things they have, and I think that is even more interesting. People will play, of course, always with identity and with the language, you know, because that's the first thing I like to explain that's the way I look at people, as, you know, like their style, their fashion, or whatever. It's a sort of language, and I can read it, and that sometimes it's poetry, and sometimes it's very Starbucks, for instance. And even when you said that, I do agree with the fact that, of course, we take the women from the streets like this, and we also ask them to come over to the studio. Can you wear the same thing? Because whatever. When they do come in the studio with something different, it is most of the time a similar style. It's very difficult for people to change. And that is the change is done, especially in identities, when you are young. You know, people change a lot when they are till 25, 30 or whatever. And then they fall down in a certain, or it all comes together in a certain feeling of identity. This is me. And then they hardly ever change.
We've got one last question from the front, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you for the lecture, and I think it's interesting because you not only show the similarity, but also the difference. I mean, when you show like one, because there are more than 100 groups, right? And go on and go on, maybe we suddenly feel there's actually no groups we can label. But the interesting thing is the picture plus the description always make we laughing. Make we laughing. Like, yeah. I mean, it's communicating in a sense. So the question is, you mentioned that some people were more aware that they are in that group. Some people were not. What does it mean to you?
There are two things. In the beginning of our project, people were very, sometimes very aggressive even towards us, because they say, you're boxing people, you can't do that, and whatever. Now, during the last 15 years, 15 years exactly proves your point, we are not praised or judged for our boxing. We are praised that we show diversity. And diversity is the new fashion world. We're talking about sociological things. You know, that's the euphemism to explain the difficulties in modern society. We just say diversity, that's fantastic. So that is also a thing that the more you do it, the more, you know, actually your point is that what you wanted to prove goes away. Well, that is quite funny. We feel that. We feel that by working and continuing with the process, that when you maybe have 400 series, there is no point anymore about, you know, you can be everything. Then about the groups who are some of the groups, of course, when they're very subcultural, then of course you know exactly what you do. And when a lot of groups who are not that subcultural and not aware of the fact that they can be put in groups, that has to do with the fact that people don't change anymore that much after a certain age. For instance, with the grannies, they had that style already for 20 years, and there will be forever that granny in that sense. And of course, when you portray them, you said, oh yeah, you already portrayed me, but it is that style stays the same over the years. So
I think we can round it up with that. Yeah. Before you all go off, this was the last Public Occasion Agency event of this academic year. We'll be back in autumn here at the AA. Thank you, Ari, for provoking these questions and your presentations. And thank you, audience, for coming. Bye.
Thank you.